So I wanted to do a video explaining some of the fundamentals of Halo 1, but this video is going to be broad enough that it's going to apply to most all shooters. And I want to start out doing that by introducing some buckets, some ways of thinking, some definitions that have been useful to me. So I divide everything, when we're talking about playing Halo or any kind of shooter, you're going to have whatever kind of talent you inherently have. And there's not much that can be done other than practice. There's not much that can be done about that aspect of things. But if we're talking about how you think about the game and how you approach playing the game, then there's a lot that you can do. And usually what I see is most people put too much emphasis on just the raw talent and next to none whatsoever on how to actually think about the game. So the three buckets that I put the thinking part of the game into are knowledge, strategy, and tactics. Now, to me, knowledge is everything about the game that you can learn about just reading online. Things like where do the power-ups, the power weapons spawn at, where do the players spawn, where can you stand to spawn your teammates in a random position, where do you throw grenades to knock power-ups down, knock power weapons to you, and where are all the callouts on every single map. And the one part that is different from all of these is the meta. That actually is knowledge that is in respect to other players. So it's knowing where do people at the different levels of talent, where do they go, how do they play, how can I play around what they're trying to do. The next bucket is strategy. Oh yeah, I'm not going to deep dive too much into the knowledge side of things because there's already people who do a very, very good job of that. And so if you want to learn more about the knowledge, I highly recommend halo1hub.com and Halo Spawns. So the next bucket is strategy. And it's built from your knowledge of the game, and it is applicable before the game even starts. This is your plan for how you're going to approach every single map and with every single game type. And this is more or less static. So you know, for an example, on Damnation, you know before the game starts that you want to keep control of green and you want to always be on top of the overshield right when that spawns. You know that the rockets spawn on every even minute, 246, and you know that only the cam and overshield spawns on every odd minute. And so these kinds of things are how you're going to start to formulate your strategy. And you're going to have a strategy for optimal scenarios, which is you have everything, you have camo, rockets, overshield, and now how do you go about using that? How do you push your advantage? As well as suboptimal strategies for when the other team has green control and you're trying to figure out how do I take that back without just rushing through the portal and dying over and over. And the last bucket that I want to introduce is tactics. This is only in-game. It is short-term execution of your strategy. So it is very reactive. So if you see, you have that concept that I want to control the cam, rockets, overshield on Damnation. So my strategy to do that is I'm going to stand out on waterway, I'm going to grenade the camo down, grenade jump over the wall with the overshield and grab the rockets and camo. But then you see the other team is up on, maybe they're up on cat, maybe they're up on green plat, and so you have to think, okay, I don't have the optimum scenario here, so I have to be a little bit reactive for how I go about things. I can't necessarily just stand out in the open and take everything I want. Maybe I come at it from a different angle. So the single biggest fundamental piece that new players need to be building, current players need to be improving on, and I see even high-level players screw this up all the time, is just your positioning. Where are you positioning, and are you basing your positioning on your strategy and tactics? So if your strategy is wrong, then you're going to be usually in the wrong side of the map. So for an example, on Chill Out, we know that once again, every even minute, camo, rockets, and overshield spawns, and we also know that the rockets, especially on such a close quarters tight map, the rockets are incredibly useful, incredibly powerful. So our strategy would be something like we want to prioritize rockets. So if you don't have your strategy right, or if you're not paying attention to the timer, then you might be in shotgun room at the 2-minute mark, or at the 4-minute mark. The other mistake that people make with positioning is being tactically vulnerable. And I'll see this all the time out of most players, maybe not at the highest level of play, but almost every single other person is not paying enough attention to how tactically vulnerable they are. So they'll be trying to get into a pistol fight with multiple opponents. They'll be moving in such a way that they can't immediately take cover, they can't back down, or they will decide to move or stand in high damage areas, areas that you know the other team is going to be throwing grenades at, you know that they're going to be rocketing. So the fundamentals for that is just to try to focus on making sure that your positioning is based on good tactics. How easily can you back down? How easily can you just be in a one-on-one or optimum scenario like shooting somebody in the back? And are you even on the correct spot on the map? The second thing that I see, mostly novice players, but also once again this one runs up pretty high as well, is not having any respect whatsoever for the other players in the game. On the other team. So you see at the very lowest level, the people who are brain dead or brand new to the game or whatever, they will just start charging out in the open. They'll charge in a straight line, and they don't care how out in the open they are. They don't care about running over the top of grenades. They don't care how many different people could shoot them. They have zero respect for the other players. And when you start watching high-level people play, if they have a couple shots on them, they'll just back down because they respect that the other person is also incredibly talented, and maybe they get that third headshot. So even if they have, say, something like a height advantage, they'll just say, you know what, I've already got the advantage, I can back down here. So like I said, most low-level players will run around in the open, they'll not back down during a fight, and that's one that actually you'll sometimes even see professional players do. Like say Snip3down, for an example. I haven't watched him play in a long time, but back in the day, he would never, ever back down in a fight, and it would quite often burn him. Whereas if you compare him to somebody like Pistola, Pistola is very, very smart. He will start a fight and then just decide to back down right away because he doesn't have the advantage, or he isn't shooting with his teammates. And so I picked Damnation for this picture because the other mistake, a major mistake that even higher level people make, is trying to force a play against an enemy's strong position, such as charging through the portal over and over and over when you know that the other team has green control because you're frustrated and you're trying to make a play. So if you want to train good habits for how to be respectful, keep a kind of a running dialogue in your head. How exposed am I? How vulnerable am I? Can people be killing me right at this very moment? So am I moving in a consistent manner? I think a lot of people want to play very fast gameplay. They want to always be pushing the aggression, pushing the action, and that's not necessarily conducive. When you watch higher level people play, they are very patient, they're very calculated. They think about the next move that they're going to make. And another thing is trusting your teammates. If you have teammates that you can trust, then you kind of have some breathing room to slow down your play. Whereas if you don't trust your teammates at all, then maybe you feel that the world is on your shoulders and I have to, really make plays. I got to snipe these guys. I got to three-shot somebody. So if you have teammates who can actually do anything, have some trust in your teammates that they can also carry their weight. And lastly, look for alternate solutions. So instead of just charging through the portal over and over, charging in the same direction over and over, try going at it from a different angle, looking at things in a different way. So most often in Halo, what you're doing, even in Slayers, you're not actually necessarily trying to get kills. What you're trying to get is an advantage, and then using that advantage to then get kills. And that's kind of something that's born out of your strategy, but often what you'll see, usually at lower levels of play, but also kind of, that this one will go up a little ways, is that people have, well, either no respect or just no consideration for how to obtain an advantage so that you can kill the other people more easily and never die. So things like cycling power-ups. So what you're trying to do, every game, what you're trying to do is you're trying to find some advantage, and then using that advantage, even if it's just picking up a sniper rifle or looking at or moving in a different way so that you have good cover and the other guy doesn't have good cover. Some minor advantage that you can then use to start snowballing the game. Halo 1 is a very, very snowbally game. And one of the ways it's snowbally is through spawn killing. So wherever you're standing, you have a sphere. It's radiating outside of you. And if your teammate is dead and your sphere covers a spawn zone, your teammate will spawn in one of the spawn zones. And now that you know that, when you kill someone on the other team and they're going to respawn, you can look at where their teammates are right now, look at spawns that you know are nearby, and you can already be grenading them or already be rocketing them or lining up your snipes on them. So that's one of the biggest ways that you want to push an advantage that you already have. When you get the kill, start keeping those kills rolling. Don't kill everybody on their entire team so that you know where they're going to be spawning at, keeping them spawn trapped in a bad spot. Combat exists in two different ways, symmetrical and asymmetrical. Symmetrical combat is when you are both shooting at each other. Asymmetrical combat is when you're shooting them in the back, you are shooting a rocket at a wall near them when they can't see you, you are winging grenades across the map. Any time that you can hit them where they can't hit you, that's asymmetrical combat. So that's kind of what we're always aiming for, is to have an advantage and then engage in as much asymmetrical combat as we can. There are some exceptions to that. And another thing is height. I highly, oh, my webcam's a little bit in the way here. I highly prioritize getting height advantage. Most people who are bad at the game, or bad at shooters in general, stay in the lower spots on the map. And part of the reason I like sitting up top, in addition to the fact that most Halo 1 maps put the power-ups up top, but just height in general is an advantage because you get better sight lines. You can see more of the map looking down at things than you can when you are down in these little valleys, right? Backing down is easier when you're on high ground, because if you're only poking your head out, you don't need to back down from a fight. It's very quick to just step back, whereas they would have to step around an entire corner. Also, if you are up top, only your little head is peeking out, and they have a much smaller target to hit, whereas you typically will see somebody's entire body if you're shooting down at them. Also, landing grenades, I feel like, is much easier when you're up top. I think it's much easier to hit somebody with a grenade. If you're down low, you're often, if you're not banking it off a wall, you're going to have to arc a grenade way up before it can come right back down again, and that just gives people so much time to react. There are some exceptions to this, though. The webcam is moving around. There are some exceptions to this, to pushing for the fighting advantage before you engage in fighting, and that is kind of a whack-a-mole manner of playing the game. The idea is that people aren't equal at this game. Oftentimes you're going to be way better than the people that you're playing against, and maybe this is actually a pretty common scenario, that you are the one talented person on your team, you have 3 other bad players on your team, there's 1 or 2 talented people on the other team, and the rest of their players is bad. And so you can spend all of your time trying to push to get rockets, push to get overshield, and you're kind of fighting against that 1 or 2 other people. And when they're doing the same thing, that is one way that you could spend your time. Another way that you could spend your time is realizing that poor players run around out in the open and they have 0 respect. And you can spend all your time just playing this game of whack-a-mole, of just how quickly can I kill the crappy players on the other team before the good guys on the other team can kill all my crappy players. So when you have that covered, and especially if you have good teammates, so maybe this is more in custom games where you're starting to play a little bit of a higher level, where you have talented teammates and there are talented opponents. But you need to figure out what is your duty, what is your role in that moment in the game. And part of that is to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the teams, of the players, of the position, and to understand your strategies and your optimum scenarios and your suboptimum scenarios. So for an example, let's say that you're playing on Prisoner and you are up on Overshield 3 and the enemy team is on the back wall. What is your duty in that particular moment? Let's say that you have 1 or 2 teammates dead. Maybe your duty in that moment is not to push up and try to engage in a pistol fight. Maybe your duty is just to chill out, stop moving, and start spawning your teammates in a really good spot. Or let's say it's hang 'em high. And this is a very, very frequent scenario, something that's actually quite frustrating to play with. You're on Hang 'em High, you're on blue base, you've wiped out the other team, and you know that they are spawning at blue shotgun. Most often, people just rush forward to the front of blue to start shooting down at the other team, and they completely neglect the idea that the other team also wants to be on top blue and is probably rushing up the ramps. So if you're standing there and you see that your teammates are pushing up to front blue to start spawn killing, you need to understand your duty, your role is to cover your teammates back, to not be aggressive, to slow down your gameplay and just watch the ramps, to watch the points of ingress. And in order to do this, you kind of need to be able to have a dynamic play style. You need to be able to calm down, sit back, spawn teammates, cover points, and you need to be able to say, okay, in this moment, I'm the person who has the camo. I've got the rocket launchers. My teammate's duty is now to anchor or to hold down the spawns, and it's my duty to go out and be the slayer here. One big thing, once you start kind of mastering everything, is playing with intention. When you watch very, very talented players play, it's not as reactive. They are very strategic. They're very intelligent with how they move, what decisions they're making. So for an example, if they see someone running, they will not necessarily snap over and just start shooting. Often what they'll do is snap over and then reposition the reticle. So they'll aim first and then start shooting. Or if they have camo, instead of just starting to shoot somebody, they'll wait and throw a grenade first at their feet. They make their moves with intention. It's not something that's reactionary. And they will move around with intention too. If you watch lesser talented players, they look like they're on a roller coaster. They just can't stop moving. It's very windy. It's kind of all over the place. But if you watch a talented player move, it is very precise. They'll move up to a corner, not too far out. They'll move exactly in a spot and already be aiming at the spot where somebody could be, or they'll already be shooting at the corner as they come around it. And then last thing is practicing with intention. When you're any game that you're about to start, usually I will pick one thing and I will practice that one thing. Do I want to be very precise with grabbing the power-ups at the exact time? Do I want to be practicing my pistol right now, being very calm about it? I always try to find something, focus on that thing, and practice with intention.